The world was just minutes away from an unparalleled economic collapse, a full-scale war that would have turned off the lights in the cities across the globe. Everyone thought it was a battle between Washington and Tehran. But behind the scenes, Beijing was holding a nuclear-grade economic trigger. In a stunning last-second intervention, China made a threat so devastating that Iran had no choice but to fold. But the crucial final message that stopped the missiles, it didn't come from a Chinese diplomat. It was delivered by the only ally both Tehran and Washington will trust. This is the secret history of how China and Pakistan saved the day. And it's on this note that we start today's show. Welcome, Mustafa.
Okay, I won't say that China threatened Iran devastatingly or that but we have to give China credit because everybody's been saying that India was the one that brokered this deal. China was standing behind with threats that could hurt both countries. And basically what China told Iran was that, look, we hear what you're saying, okay? And we're going to say that you have a right to defend yourself against the U.S. You have a right to have sanctions lifted against you. But if you keep the Strait of Hormuz closed, you're going to bring the downfall of everybody, especially China, which depends on the Strait of Hormuz even more than the U.S. does. And what he basically said is that if you don't work with some sort of negotiation, some sort of compromise. Hello, you there? Yeah.
Yes, I'm here. I'm with you.
Yeah, if you don't come up with some sort of compromise, then hold on, I can't see my fucking shit. Okay, I got it. If you don't come up with you can see me, right?
No, not at all.
You can't see me?
No.
Okay.
Yes, I can see you now.
Could you see me before? Yeah.
No, just for about a second. You went off, then you came back again.
Yeah, if you don't come up with some sort of compromise, the U.S. is going to destroy your infrastructure, your oil infrastructure, and you won't have China buying your oil. It's not even a threat. It's the reality on the ground. And if Iran loses China's oil, they're going to slowly lose that war against the U.S. I mean, if they lose China as a patron of their oil, who's buying their oil, they're going to lose that war. So what China did was basically come in and say that something has to be brokered, and they used Pakistan so that it doesn't look like China's the one forcing everything, or it doesn't look like U.S. is putting pressure on China. So to boil it straight down, and the second thing they said is that they would stop sending them the raw materials that they need for their missiles, because some raw materials that they needed to get from China. So basically China said, no more us buying your oil and no more us sending you raw materials unless you sit down at the table. Now, it's a 5-point initiative that China and Pakistan wrote up. Immediate cessation of hostilities and a halt to the spread of the conflict. That means that both America and Iran stop striking each other and stop striking at bases in in UAE. America stopped striking Iran, and Iran stopped striking Israel. So that seemed fair enough. The second thing was launch inclusive peace talks that explicitly safeguard Iran's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Basically, it means Iran will still own the Strait of Hormuz, Iran will own its own oil, and the U.S. will stop trying to do a regime change. That sounds fair enough. That sounds fair enough to me. I know Iran wants to go hardcore and beat these people, and they have every right to do it. But in the world of geopolitics and business, we have to remember that there are balances, and China wants your oil. They want that Iranian oil. Okay. Third thing, security of non-military targets, specifically calling for an end to strikes on energy and nuclear infrastructure. Iran should agree with that because Iran hasn't been striking those. America hasn't been striking on those. So that's a limitation on what America and Israel does. So it means that Trump can't say all of your civilization is going to end. We're going to get rid of your water supply factories or your water supply infrastructure. We're going to get rid of your power grid. So all of this seems fair. Then the fourth thing is restoration of maritime security in the Strait. That's the part that Iran has to give up on. They have to allow ships and things to come through. But if they're allowing ships and things to come through and they're not getting struck on non-military targets and their sovereignty is in place, to me, that seems like something they should be able to concede, or else fight America one-on-one without the help of China. China also gives Iran, what do you call it, satellite coordinates to fight the U.S. So losing all of that would put Iran in dire change. And the last one, adherence to the UN Charter, emphasizing multilateralism over unilateral military action. And this is important because the UN met a few days ago, and Russia and China were the only ones who voted against using force to open the Strait of Hormuz. So what China says, we voted that there wouldn't be force. So now you got to open that Hormuz diplomatically. That's basically it. So what are your thoughts on Pallavi? So it seems like a fair enough deal. China is showing Iran that even though we're friends, if we don't get oil, we're not going to help you. So you have to make some concessions. But also we're only holding you to these concessions if the U.S. upholds and stops trying to attack you and strike you and stops trying to topple your government. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Mustafa. You hit all the right notes. I mean, Iran will only continue to buy fuel. China will only continue to buy fuel from Iran if they do their bidding. And that's exactly what China is telling them, that we're your biggest customers. We buy all your fuel. Now you're going to have to ensure that we don't get into this economic quagmire as well. I mean, the price of global price of crude oil is going up. Something has to be done. So the only party that could force Iran into a deal was China, because Iran is only as comfortable economically as long as China continues to buy their oil. Once that stops, they're not as financially strong as they are. So China was a strategic mediator, so to speak, in this particular deal. And if you look at it, China, all of a sudden, from a passive observer, they have become more or less like a guarantor. You know, if I want to borrow money from you and you don't trust me, you basically ask me to go and bring someone you trust. And that's what has happened here. You know, so reportedly, they have provided assurances to Tehran, like you rightly mentioned. There's going to be political stability, the leadership will remain in place, and they won't be targeted from external Western factors and parties. So basically, and that's the most important to them. So that basically seals the security flaw necessary for Iran to engage. And
not only that, China has been giving. They're supposed to deliver advanced anti-ship cruise missiles. Those things can take down American planes, but they say we might have to pull those back if you don't open the strait. And the reason, China doesn't like to get involved in disputes, which is why they stay quiet. But they got involved in this one because if Iran was destroyed nuclearly or bombed infrastructure, it was going to threaten the sovereignty and existence of China, which is why they stepped in. But you best believe that they also called Trump, because Trump's going to meet his boss, Xi, this month, right? Probably told him, we'll pull out all your bonds that we've invested in your country. You get my point? Yeah. But it's clear, but it's clear that America doesn't want China to thrive. And I think they even want that Hormuz to be choked, because that's a good supply for China. Because after all of these agreements, and because Iran did not want to meet with the U.S., they were ready to do an existential war to the death. After all of that,
absolutely,
Trump is backtracking, saying, if you don't stop, if you don't, because Iran said we're going to keep it closed until you have leave Lebanon alone. So it looks like Trump is already trying to find an excuse to break this deal. And that's why I think China needs to be careful. China doesn't realize that America wants to destroy them by cutting their oil supply, which is their strategy. So maybe the U.S. wants there to be chaos in Iran to hurt China. You get what I'm saying? So we have to keep our eyes open on this and see what happens. Our last thoughts are Falabi.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. I mean, the U.S. targeting Iran is just a smokescreen. Their real target is China, just to, cut their oil supply. And I feel what is most heartwarming, perhaps, maybe they may not be able to implement it immediately, is to see that this strategy is incentivized by settling energy fees and transit fees in Chinese yuan as against the dollar. Once this is provided, Iran is given the opportunity to transact in yuan, and then this bypasses traditional Western controlled banking system. So, and this will give them a lot of financial stability long term going forward, because they basically don't trust the West.
But that might bring so they need to do that now, because the U.S. is going to try to stop that from happening, because once the dollar dies, the U.S. banking and the Western banking system dies out. So that's why I'm saying we might still have no choice but to have the war of wars. China's trying to avoid the war of wars, but you're going to have the war of wars when you're dealing with Nazis. The world didn't want to go to World War II, but Hitler made it so. So if Trump keeps on breaking peace with his megalomaniac bullshit, there'll be no short choice, which is why eventually China and Russia can no longer say that they're non-interventionists. They're going to have to intervene on the behalf of Iran, because if Iran falls, they're coming after China and Russia next. All right, take it out of Falabi.
In another brilliant show, we have been discussing how